Monday, we cannot hear you. You should be able to unmute yourself now.
Okay. Okay. Okay, so we will be doing a period now of the walking meditation, and I'll just repeat the instructions that I gave yesterday. So in your living quarters, you can choose an area where you can walk, say, 12 to 15 steps without running into any furniture. Or if you have a hallway, you can choose the hallway. Or if you're in a house, maybe if the weather is pleasant, you can even choose an alleyway outside. Don't do it on the sidewalk, because if you're walking back and forth, people will think you're strange. Okay, so you choose an area with about 12 to 15 steps, and then you walk at a moderately slow pace, not the extremely slow style of walking meditation that some centers use, or some teachers use, but it's moderately slow. And the key to the practice is to be mindful of each step as continuously and consistently as possible. So when you're taking the right step, be mindful of the entire movement of the step. And if sometimes I find it helpful to pay special attention to, to the touch of the foot as it lands on the floor. So with the right step, you're mindful of moving the foot. You could use the mental note right, right, or stepping, stepping. Then you're attentive to the touch of the foot, right foot on the floor. Then you take the left step, mindful of walking, walking, or stepping, stepping. Then attentive to the touch of the step of the foot on the floor. And so in this way, you walk the 12 or 15 paces. Then when you come to the end of your walking path, you make the mental note, stopping, stopping. Then you stand, and then you just observe the body in the standing position, standing, standing. Then when turning around, you're mindful of turning, turning, turning. Then when you get back facing the starting point, again, you just stand there just for a moment, aware, standing, standing. Then you walk back in the opposite direction. Again, mindful of each step, stepping, stepping, touch on the ground, on the floor, stepping, stepping, touch on the floor, till you come back to the starting point. Then again, you turn around and walk back. And so you just continue to do this. We'll continue to do this until 2 p.m. Be back in your seat at 2 p.m. because then we'll have the period of the sitting meditation. Okay, so let us start our walking. Yeah, we should spotlight Venerable Mangala. Yes.
Okay, ready to begin?
Yes, Bhante.
Okay, can you hear me all right?
Yes, Bhante.
Okay. Okay, so good afternoon, everybody. So this is our second meditation session together. So we should be getting into our meditation positions, however you choose to do that, either on the floor, chair, couch, bed. Remember to take your time in settling the mind, taking time to relax the body, settle the mind in the body, letting go of thoughts of the past, plans for the future, just letting them drift away, giving all your attention to settling down, feeling the body, sitting, becoming aware of all the different sensations that go along with sitting. And sitting doing meditation is not just observing the breath and having these amazing meditative experiences or deep insights. It's also just being patient and going slow and taking your time. It's all the preparatory things that go into it. So don't just dive in and start beating away at observing the breath or anything like that. Go slowly, patiently, mindfully. When you feel ready, you can turn your attention to observing the breath. If that's your particular object of meditation, as I'm sure many of you are, just keep in mind that we're not trying to alter or change or add on, manipulate, to see things as they are, to see their natural activities, everything that we need, everything that can help us attain insight or attain samadhi or jhana or whatever is already happening. It's all here within the body, within the mind. It's just setting up the stage for all these things to present themselves to us. So we don't need to alter, change, manipulate anything. It's already going on. So we just let the body and let the breath do its thing. All we do is watch and observe. Taking every opportunity to develop more positive, more mental states and attitudes that are conducive to practice. When things that come up that are disturbing or might be unpleasant during our practice, which can be things like sounds or pain or people talking or whatever, we don't go out and disturb it. We don't add insult to injury. Don't get frustrated, angry. Why are these people talking? Why did they go away? Don't they know that I'm meditating? They're so rude. Why is there pain in my body? Why is this happening to me? Coming from this place of me, myself, and I. That doesn't help us in any way. So letting things arise, letting them stay, letting them pass, observing their behavior, observing how they come, how they go, seeing how we might even go out and disturb them. These all are things that we can learn from, learn how to improve our mental habits, how to improve our meditation practice. We're just got to seize these opportunities. Instead of getting angry, getting disheartened, getting judgmental. The story ends there. But if we take it as an opportunity to learn, to grow, to improve ourselves, then there's no limitations. There's only going further down, further along in our journeys. So whether it's physical sensations or sounds or mental activity, we tend to just handle them all in the same way, with a calm mind, with a cool mind, not with a mind full of frustration or anger or wanting. We just acknowledge that these things are part of the nature of the body, part of the nature of the mind, and that they all follow the same kind of activity. They arise, they stay, they pass away. So there's no need to get overly involved with them. There's no need to get upset about them. No need to get frustrated with them. We have power to to move beyond them, to let them go. So that's how we can practice for this time being. So let's continue on with our practices. Now, let's direct our minds into cultivating our thoughts of metta. As usual, we'll begin with ourselves, directing the thoughts of metta. May I be well. May I be happy. May I be safe. May I be peaceful. Whatever phrases that resonate with you, as long as they are thoughts of kindness, compassion, directing them to yourselves, letting them fill up your mind, fill up your hearts. When you feel ready, all that loving kindness feeling that you've cultivated in your mind and in your heart, radiated outwards to all the other beings living on the world. All those who, just like ourselves, have people who love us, who are struggling, who have fears, anxieties, just like we have fear and anxiety. We want to protect the ones we love, we want to feel a sense of security. Just like us, they want those same things. So send out that thought, love and kindness to all those beings, whoever they are, wherever they are, doesn't matter. May all beings in all the directions, may they be well, may they be happy, may they be safe, may they be peaceful. And when you're ready, you can slowly begin to open up your eyes. To finish up, we can rub our palms together. Get them nice and toasty. You can rub your forehead, top of your head, back of your neck, your shoulders and shoulder blades. Upper back, down to your lower back, and your buttocks, thighs and your knees, calves and shins, down to your feet. So I think that'll do it for our meditation practice this afternoon, evening, whatever. So I'll see you all later on. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Bande.
And thank you.
It will take 5-minute break. So I'll start the session at 2:45. Since we had the meditation from 1 now till 2:40, so people might need a little break. Okay, I'm ready to resume. Okay, so now we are in the first afternoon session of July 4th. And so far we have covered the first three noble truths: dukkha, its origin, its cessation. And now we come to the fourth noble truth, and that is the truth of the way leading to the cessation of dukkha. So let us look at our primary text. Okay, so taking the English translation, we have Buddha now says, now this is the noble truth of the way, or even patipada we could translate as the practice leading to the cessation of dukkha. That is, it is this noble eightfold path, which consists of 8 factors: right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. We have to remember that.
Ande, would you like to share screen with us?
Oh, thank you for reminding me. I thought that it was being, no wonder I was having trouble. Okay, now it's being shared. Well, let me share the entire, let me just stop that. Okay, so I already read the statement about the fourth noble truth. And we have to remember that this is the second place within the sutta in which the Buddha mentions the Noble Eightfold Path. In the first passage, the opening passage of the sutta, the Buddha explained the Noble Eightfold Path as the middle way which doesn't veer towards any of the extremes, which was discovered by the Buddha, and which leads to vision, to knowledge, to peace, to enlightenment, to nibbana. And so now this will give us a clue to understand the function of the Noble Eightfold Path within the structure of the Buddha's teachings. The second noble truth shows us that the cause or origin of dukkha is craving, the craving that leads to renewed existence and so forth. And now other teachings of the Buddha, particularly the formula of dependent origination, shows us that craving, that the ground of craving, the underlying root of craving is ignorance or avidya or ajnana, the lack of knowledge. So ignorance leads to craving, and craving leads to dukkha. And so in order to reach the end of dukkha, the end of suffering, one has to ultimately uproot craving. But the way to uproot craving is not through extreme asceticism, self-mortification, self-flagellation, deprivation, and so forth. But the way to uproot craving is by tracing it back to its origin point, which is ignorance, and then to eliminate ignorance. And so the antidote to ignorance, that which will eliminate ignorance, is correct knowledge or wisdom or direct, maybe call it penetration of the truth. And this will lead to viraga, the ending of craving and attachment, or we could say to the destruction of craving. And that will lead to the end of dukkha. And so we need a path that is capable of culminating in this correct knowledge, not just intellectual knowledge, but maybe we could call this visual knowledge, a knowing that is also a seeing into the truth, or also called wisdom or direct penetration. And so the purpose of the Noble Eightfold Path is to bring forth that liberating knowledge. And so we have these 8 factors laid out in a particular sequence. And there's a common way of dividing up the 8 factors of the. Let me first take some general statements about the path. I just collected a few. Yeah, so I just took a few sample statements about the path that we find, particularly there's a chapter in the Samyutta Nikaya, which collects together various statements about the path. So here the Buddha says that these 8 things, when developed and cultivated, lead to going beyond from the near shore to the far shore. So this is a metaphor or a kind of imagery used in the Buddhist texts very often. I guess because in northern India, there would be many rivers. And so people who are traveling have to face that task of crossing over from the shore on which they're standing to the other shore to carry on their business. And so there would be many ferries and rafts that are used to cross from one shore to the other. And so within the Buddhist imagery, the near shore represents this world of birth and death, the shore of samsara, and the far shore, which it is sometimes said that the near shore is dangerous and perilous, that there are like crocodiles and dangerous snakes, vipers and bandits and assassins, whereas the far shore is safe and secure, and the far shore represents nirvana. And so the means of crossing from the near shore to the far shore is the Noble Eightfold Path of right view through to right concentration. And even though the Buddha often, we see him prescribing the Noble Eightfold Path to the monastics, but the Buddha lays down the Eightfold Path as a kind of universal mode of practice intended for all his disciples. And there's a sutta in which the Buddha says that I praise right practice, whether of a lay person or a monastic person, one practicing rightly, whether a lay person or a monastic, because of their right practice, achieves the right method, the Dhamma that is wholesome. And what is that right practice? It is the 8 factors of the Noble Eightfold Path. Sometimes it's thought that the Noble Eightfold Path comprises all of Buddhist practice, but actually that's not really the case. The Noble Eightfold Path, we have to remember, is laid down by the Buddha as the way leading to the cessation of dukkha. It is the way to liberation. But the Buddha teaches different paths, good and wholesome paths, to different people depending upon their situation and their aspiration. So we can find many codes of right behavior or ethics in the Buddha's discourses that don't fit so perfectly into the Noble Eightfold Path. For example, if you look at the very popular Mangala Sutta, Mahamangala Sutta that I've been chanting in the morning, we find many virtues listed there that are not explicitly included in the Noble Eightfold Path, like looking after one's mother and father, supporting wife and children, the practice of generosity, of supporting one's other relatives, qualities like reverence, humility, patience, contentment. So all of those are good qualities, virtuous qualities that the Buddha recommends, but they don't fit neatly and precisely into the Noble Eightfold Path. And for those who are not aspiring to liberation, the Buddha will also teach alternative good paths. For those who aspire to the heavenly world, the Buddha will teach the 10 ways of wholesome conduct, or the 3 means of creating merit: generosity, virtuous behavior, and meditation, particularly the meditation on the qualities of the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. For those who aspire to the Brahma world, the way many of the Brahmins did, and they come to the Buddha will teach the practice of the 4 divine abodes, the Brahma Viharas: boundless loving kindness, compassion, altruistic joy, and equanimity. But for those who seek liberation from the cycle of birth and death, for those who aspire to Nibbana, then the Buddha teaches the Noble Eightfold Path. So this is the way for going completely beyond the near shore of samsara, whether the heavens, the Brahma world, the human realm. The Noble Eightfold Path leads beyond all of them to the unconditioned Nibbanic state. Okay, now there's a common way of dividing up the factors of the Noble Eightfold Path, which we actually find in the suttas. Taking the first 2 factors, let me do this someplace else. Taking the first 2 factors said to be equivalent to the wisdom group. That's right view and right intention. The middle 3 factors, right speech, right action, right livelihood, are said to constitute the morality group, the sila kanda. And the last 3 factors, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration, are said to constitute the concentration group. And so in this way, we have the Noble Eightfold Path comprised within the 3 trainings in moral conduct. Let's call this the moral conduct. The moral conduct, concentration, and wisdom. So this is mentioned in the suttas, so I can't say that it's wrong, but I say that it has to be taken with some reservations, because first, right effort and right mindfulness are really necessary in cultivating all the path factors. So in order to have right view and right intention, one needs right effort and right mindfulness. To follow right speech, right action, right livelihood, you have to be mindful of your speech, mindful of what kind of bodily actions one is going to be performing, what kind of livelihood one is following. So that takes mindfulness. And when the tendency towards deviation arises from the standards of right speech, right action, right livelihood, you need right effort to rein in the mind and come back to the right course. But probably because right effort and right mindfulness work together to bring samadhi or concentration. So they're put within the concentration group. And then right view really works in tandem together with all of the other factors of the path. And so, say you can have somebody who is not a follower of the Buddha's teaching, who doesn't accept the Buddha's teaching, and they could still speak in ways that are in conformity with right speech. They can act in ways that are in conformity with right action. They can act in ways that are in conformity with right livelihood. So you could say that they have right speech, right action, right livelihood. But for them, their right speech, right action, right livelihood would not be factors of the Noble Eightfold Path. To be part of the Noble Eightfold Path, all of the other factors have to be rooted in right view and guided by right view. So right view, we can say, is the eye that sees the goal, and also it's maybe the driver that conducts all of the other path factors along the route to be taken towards the goal. Okay, let us now look at the formal definitions of the path factors. And for this, we go to the Satyavibhanga Sutta, which is in the Majjhima Nikaya Sutta number 141, which is spoken by Venerable Sariputta. And it's a little bit puzzling that in the Dhammacakka Sutta, the Buddha doesn't explain and analyze the 8 path factors. But my hypothesis is, in fact, that the Buddha had to explain them at that time, but probably to keep the sutta concise, the explanation of the path factors had to be moved elsewhere. And so we have a sutta in the Samyutta Nikaya. This is chapter 45, sutta number 8, which gives an analysis of the path factors. And that same analysis we find in the Satyavibhanga Sutta. So let us turn to that sutta for the explanation of the 8 path factors. Okay, so here Sariputta is speaking. He says, what is the Noble Eightfold? The truth of the way leading to the cessation of suffering. And then he enumerates the 8 path factors. And now he's going to analyze them, exactly as they were explained elsewhere by the Buddha. So what is right view? Knowledge of dukkha, knowledge of the origin of dukkha, knowledge of the cessation of dukkha, knowledge of the way leading to the cessation of dukkha. That is called right view. And this is quite interesting that here we have, maybe we put it this way, we have the Four Noble Truths. Then within the Four Noble Truths, we have truth number 4, the Noble Eightfold Path. And then within the Noble Eightfold Path, factor number 1, knowledge of the Four Noble Truths. And then when you have knowledge of the Four Noble Truths, you have knowledge of the fourth of truth number 4, which is the Noble Eightfold Path. So you could almost go in an infinite regress. Okay, now when we take right view, I should explain that there are 2 kinds of right view that are spoken about in the suttas. One is what we sometimes call mundane right view, or the right view pertaining to life in the world. And this is the view of karma and its fruits or its result. And so here we have a sutta in which the Buddha says that any woman or man, householder or monastic, should often reflect, thus I am the owner of my karma, the heir of my karma, I have karma as my origin, and so forth. Whatever deeds or karma I do, good or bad, of that I will be the heir. So this is the mundane right view, which is the view that enables us to act ethically within the world. We have to be able to distinguish what is wrong, what is right, what is good, what is bad. And so with mundane right view, one understands that such actions as killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, such types of speech as lying, such types of thoughts as greedy thoughts, hateful thoughts, malicious thoughts, and so on, that those are unwholesome, that they create unwholesome karma that will lead to lower realms of rebirth and misery and misfortune in future lives. And one understands on the opposite side that such deeds as abstaining from killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, speaking in truthful, harmonious, gentle ways, thinking good thoughts creates good karma, wholesome karma, which will generate a fortunate type of rebirth and lead to well-being and happiness in future lives. So that is the kind of mundane right view that applies to life within the world. But as the counterpart to the mundane right view, we have the world transcending or liberating right view. And this is the right view of the Four Noble Truths. This is the view that will lead to the overcoming of craving and the other defilements, and to the realization of Nibbana. Okay, so we start with right view. And probably when the Buddha is explaining right view to his close disciples, he doesn't have to teach the mundane right view, which they already know. So he just goes straight in and teaches the liberating or world transcending right view. Okay, then we have right. The second factor is right intention. Sometimes this is translated as right thought, but that's a little ambiguous. The Pali word is sankappa, which indicates the intentional or purposive aspect of thought. And so here we have three kinds of right intention. There are probably many, many kinds of right intention, but for some reason, the Buddha, maybe to keep it concise, the Buddha has just enumerated or mentioned three kinds of right intention. So one is the intention of renunciation. This is in Pali, nekama, which doesn't mean that one has to leave the household life to become a monastic person, but it means that one has to have as a guiding purpose, a motivation in one's practice to give up one's attachments, one's clinging, one's craving to the best of one's ability. As I said earlier, it's a gradual path, a gradual practice, but this is something one has to work on to develop this capacity for relinquishment, for giving up, for removing attachments in order to move in the direction of true liberation. And so we could say that the intention of renunciation is opposed to greed, one of the three unwholesome roots. And then we have the intention of non-ill will. Sounds a little clumsy. Let us just call it the intention of goodwill. It's expressed negatively as abhyapada sankappa, but in effect it means goodwill. So this is in effect desiring, wishing for the well-being and happiness of others. In effect, this is almost synonymous with metta, with loving kindness. Or maybe we could say that this is the intention that lies behind loving kindness. And then the third kind of right intention is the intention of maybe non-cruelty is too narrow, too specific. Rather, I would call it the intention of non-harming, the intention not to harm others. And in Pali, this is avihingsa. And if you know anything, you might have come across the expression ahimsa, even if you don't know Pali or Sanskrit. It was one of the qualities strongly advocated by Gandhi in his struggle for the liberation of India from British rule. And then Martin Luther King Jr. adopted, through the influence of Gandhi, the idea of nonviolence as the means towards the attainment of the civil rights and voting rights for the Black people in the United States. He might have even used the word ahimsa. So ahimsa, avihingsa, basically the same quality, just that this has a prefix. So it means the intention not to inflict any harm on others, any suffering on others. So nonviolence is one aspect of it, but it can also include not harming either physically or with speech. And we could say that what underlies the intention of non-harming is compassion. And so both the intention of goodwill and the intention of non-harming together counteract the unwholesome quality of hatred. And right view will counteract delusion. And so we have here the first two factors of the path are opposed to the three unwholesome roots. So they're starting already with these two factors. One is starting to demolish, to abolish, to weaken, to attenuate, and ultimately to eliminate the three unwholesome roots. And these two come at the beginning of the path, which is why I don't think right view can be just point blank equated with wisdom. We could call it the seed or beginning of wisdom, because here one is starting with a intellectual or conceptual understanding of the Four Noble Truths. And when one gains that conceptual understanding of the Four Noble Truths, then it modifies one's intention. So when one sees how craving produces suffering for oneself, then one forms the intention or purpose of removing craving, which means one moves in the direction of renunciation. And when one sees how suffering afflicts all other human beings and sentient beings, then this will give rise within oneself the intention of wishing well-being and happiness towards others, and forming the intention not to add to their suffering by harming them in any way, by treating them cruelly or with violence. And so we start off with right view and right intention as, we could say, the foundations of the path, the guides on the path. Then when right view and right intention, when we adopt these two factors, then they influence our ways of behavior. So then we come into the three factors that constitute the moral conduct, the ethical conduct group. So we have right speech, and then for convenience, the Buddha analyzes this, breaks it down into four types or four aspects of right speech. And they're expressed negatively because I think the Buddha wants to begin with abstaining from the wrong modes of conduct. But for each of these, there's a positive counterpart. So first, on the negative side, we have abstaining from false speech. That's from deliberately telling lies. Abstaining from malicious speech. Malicious speech, the way it's explained, is speech that is intended to create conflict and division between people who are living together in harmony and in concord. So when you start spreading malicious reports about this person to those people, one creates conflict, division, and friction between them. That is malicious speech. Maybe I've just explained. So the opposite of abstaining from false speech is to speak the truth, which doesn't mean that you always have to speak the truth on every occasion. Sometimes it's better just to not say anything. But if you have to say something, especially something important, speak the truth. The opposite of abstaining from malicious speech is speaking words that bring, when people are divided in conflict with each other, you speak words that bring them together, that unify them, that promote harmony and good relations between people.
Bande.
Okay, then we have abstaining from harsh speech. That's angry speech, speech that, or sarcastic speech, speech that hurts the feelings of others. And instead, one speaks gently, politely, with kind intentions to others.
Bande.
And then the fourth, one abstains from idle chatter. And instead, one tries to limit one's speech and speak in meaningful ways. Again, this doesn't mean that one has to observe a vow of silence. Sometimes if you're given to too much talk, it's useful to observe this from time to time. But before speaking, try to reflect on what one is going to say and consider, is this just indulging in idle chatter or gossip? Or what are the words that I'm going to say? Are they really going to contribute to be meaningful in some ways? Okay, so this is right speech. Then we have right action, which means really right physical action. And we have three kinds of abstinence. So abstaining from killing living beings, this is the negative formulation. But in the positive side, the Buddha says that the noble disciple is one who has put down the rod and weapon, the means of harming others. Today we would say, I'm sad to say this, putting down the guns and the knives, and who dwells compassionate for the welfare of all living beings. Then abstaining from taking what is not given. In fact, that means abstaining from stealing. Instead, one lives honestly. And then abstaining from misconduct and sensual pleasures. So this is referring to, this is the broad definition applicable to everybody, but in the distinction of lay people and monastics. In the case of lay people, it means abstaining from what we might call unfaithful sexual relationships or abusive sexual relationships or inappropriate sexual relations or, as you said, abusive, exploit from sexually exploiting others in any way, and remaining faithful to one's partner. And for monastics, it means complete abstinence from sexual activity. So this is called right action, right bodily action. Then comes right livelihood. The definition here is a bit circular. So it simply says the noble disciple abandons wrong livelihood and earns his or her living by right livelihood. But elsewhere in the suttas, the Buddha enumerates various types of wrong livelihood. And in today's world, we could vastly extend that list of modes of wrong livelihood. Okay, then we come to the three factors that constitute, maybe you call this the meditative side of the path. So this is right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. But these are going to take some time to go through. And I think maybe I see 3:22. Why don't we take a break now? We'll make this a 15-minute break. Okay, no, we'll come back at 3:40, and then I'll continue with the explanation of the path starting at 3:40.
Monday. Monday.
No, let me go on at least to cover right effort. Okay, let us take right effort then.
Monday. Since you're gonna go on,
What is that?
yes, we're getting requests from the audience to, is it possible for you to increase the font size or the view size of your document?
Yeah, that could be done easily. Is that better?
Yes, it is a lot better. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so here we have right effort. So even though it's formulated by way of the monk, but we should say that anybody, a practitioner, these same things apply to the practitioner or to any practitioner. So here the practitioner awakens or arouses desire for the non-arising of unarisen, bad, unwholesome states, makes effort, arouses energy, exerts the mind, and strives. Then he awakens desire for the abandoning of arisen, bad, unwholesome states, makes effort, arouses energy, exerts the mind, and strives. So we have unwholesome qualities of mind, unwholesome states of mind. So in regard to those, there's a twofold effort. Some states have not yet arisen, but they're sort of pushing to arise, sort of trying to sneak into the mind when you're not aware. And in that case, you apply energy to prevent them from arising. And then inevitably, from time to time, unwholesome states will find the opportunity to slip into the mind and start to gain momentum in the mind. And when one recognizes them, becomes aware that they're present, then one makes the effort to remove, to dispel those unwholesome states of mind. So in regard to the unwholesome states, two kinds of right effort. And similarly, in regard to the wholesome states, two kinds of right effort. First, there are unarisen wholesome states that we want to bring into being. And so when make arouses the desire to give rise to those wholesome states, one makes the effort, arouses energy, exerts the mind, and strives. Particularly, in this case, it would be developing the 7 factors of enlightenment, for example, developing mindfulness and investigation and energy and joy and so forth. So one makes that effort to give rise to them. And then when the wholesome states have arisen, one wants to strengthen them and make them strong and stable, and then to increase them and bring them to fulfillment. So that is the second type of right effort regarding the wholesome states. And so in this way, we have 4 aspects of right effort. Okay, maybe at this point, we'll take the break and then we'll come back. We'll make it a 15-minute break, come back at 3:40, and we'll resume at 3:40, going into right mindfulness and briefly into right concentration. Okay, so we continue now. So this is the second afternoon session, and we'll be continuing with our overview of the Noble Eightfold Path. And so now we come to right mindfulness, and this is explained by using the stock formula for the 4 foundations of mindfulness. So we have here the monk or the practitioner abides contemplating the body in the body, ardent, clearly comprehending and mindful, having put away, this is my old rendering, covetousness and grief. Having put away longing and dejection in regard to the world. Okay, so the Buddha has prescribed these 4 domains of mindfulness. So first, the question comes up, what is mindfulness? And there have been many, many attempts to explain and to understand what mindfulness is. And I don't have a very simple, definitive definition of mindfulness. In a way, mindfulness is a little bit like tasting a mango. Like if you've never eaten a mango before and you come to me and ask me, what does a mango taste like? I can give some analogies and similes, but all I can do to help somebody understand what a mango tastes like is to give them a slice of mango and ask them to eat it. And so mindfulness is the same way. So what I would say, if I attempt to characterize it, it is a reflexive awareness by which one puts one's own experience under the light of observation. It's a turning back of the beam of awareness upon oneself to observe and to understand oneself. And so the foundations of mindfulness are actually quite somewhat complex phenomena. So we have here that one dwells contemplating the body in the body, but then one has 3 factors mentioned. Ardent, the word ardent implies the presence of energy. The expression clearly comprehending, sampajano, implies that there's some wisdom operating here, some discernment, some capacity for recognition and, and discernment and identification. And then mindful is the presence of mindfulness. So you have energy, discernment or comprehension, and mindfulness working together in contemplating the body, looking into the body, observing the body. And one does this having put away longing and dejection in regard to the world. So longing and dejection maybe represent the hindrances or obstacles to mindful contemplation. Longing is desire or craving, and dejection is kind of displeasure, dissatisfaction. And so for the contemplation to proceed smoothly and successfully, one has to put away those obstructive states and bring into being and strengthen energy, discernment, and mindfulness. And then when you look at the Satipatthana Sutta, one finds in contemplation of the body about 6 exercises mentioned, including mindfulness of breathing, mindfulness of the postures, the practice of clear comprehension in everyday activities, the analysis of the body into the 32 constituents, the contemplation of the body by way of the 4 elements, and then the contemplation of the disintegration of the body at death. Okay, then we have contemplation of feelings. So being able to distinguish one's feelings, pleasant, painful, neutral feelings. Contemplation of the mind, which means clear observation and comprehension of the state of mind. And the sutta, the Satipatthana Sutta, mentions like the initial exercise is to recognize when the mind is overcome by lust, or when it's free from lust, when it's overcome by hatred or ill will, when it's without ill will, when it's overcome by delusion, when it's free of delusion. So one recognizes and observes one and comprehends one's state of mind. And then the 4th foundation of mindfulness is rather complex. And this is contemplating dhammas in dhammas. So to put it very simply, I just take one of the exercises mentioned here, and that would be the contemplation of the 5 aggregates themselves, seeing the 5, being able to identify the 5 aggregates and to observe the arising and passing away of the 5 aggregates. So these are the practices of contemplative practices that lead both to calm and concentration, and also that lead to insight and to wisdom. And then the 4th, I'd say the 8th factor of the Noble Eightfold Path is right concentration, samma samadhi. And this is defined by way of the 4 stages of meditative absorption that are called the 4 jhanas. And each of these stages of jhana is more tranquil, more unified, and more equanimous than the preceding one. So in the first jhana, which is attained when the mind becomes separated from sensual pleasures and unwholesome states, still active within the first jhana is applied thought and sustained thought. And it has rapture and pleasure which arise through the seclusion from sensual pleasures and the hindrances. Then as the mind becomes more quiet, more concentrated, applied thought and sustained thought drop away, and one enters the second jhana, which is without applied thought and without sustained thought, which has greater lucidity, stronger unification of mind, and now rapture and pleasure born of concentration. Then as the concentration deepens, as the focus becomes stronger, then rapture, piti, delight, exhilaration falls away, and the mind becomes more equanimous, calmer, more balanced, and mindfulness and clear comprehension become more prominent. One is still experiencing pleasure or happiness, and one enters into the 3rd jhana. And then with the abandoning of pleasure and pain, then one enters and attains the 4th jhana, in which the feeling tone is the neutral feeling, neither painful nor pleasant feeling, and in which mindfulness becomes utterly purified through the influence of the equanimity. So that is the 4th jhana. So those are the 4 stages of samma samadhi, right concentration, the 4 jhanas or meditative absorptions. So that takes us through the 8 factors of the Noble Eightfold Path. But there are more things to say about the Eightfold Path. Sometimes I have to. Anyway, I had to note someplace. I know it in my mind, but I don't have it printed out here, that there are 2 ways of understanding the development of the Noble Eightfold Path. One way is as a sequential process of development. So from this perspective, one starts off with right view. Right view gives rise to right intention. Then through the influence of right intention or right purpose, then one undertakes the 3 morality factors of the Noble Eightfold Path: right speech, right action, and right livelihood. And then based on moral conduct, based on the 3 morality factors, one undertakes the training and meditation through the practice of right effort and right mindfulness. And then right effort and right mindfulness work together sort of hand in hand, like the 2 hands washing each other. And when they are coordinated with each other, in time, they give rise to right concentration, which moves through various stages, culminating in the attainment of the jhanas. What happened to that note I had? I looked at it just a little while ago. It's not this. Okay, the other way to understand the Noble Eightfold Path, the way it's developed, this is when the 8 factors come to maturity. Then the 8 factors work together simultaneously. So in that case, we have the 3 morality factors form the basis. We have right speech, right action, right livelihood, which have already been well developed, forming a solid foundation. Then on that basis, one enters into the process of insight contemplation, contemplating the arising and passing away of phenomena. I know where that sutta is. Let me just call it up. I think it's here. Yeah, this is what I wanted. Okay. Okay, so we have a sutta. One sutta explains the sequential arising of the path factors. So here, for a person with clear knowledge, right view arises. From right view, right intention. Then from right intention comes right speech, right action, right livelihood. And then comes right effort, then right mindfulness, and right concentration. So that seems to give a sequential perspective on the arising of the path factors. But then we have another point of view in the sutta, in the Majjhima Nikaya, sutta number 149. So this is explaining how the 8 path factors operate in the practice of insight meditation. So here the Buddha is speaking about somebody who is contemplating the I as it really is, and contemplating forms, contemplating eye consciousness, eye contact, and so on. And so this is the practice of insight meditation, advanced stage of insight meditation. And so he says the view of a person such as this is right view. His intention is right intention. His effort is right effort. His mindfulness is right mindfulness. And his concentration is right concentration. But the action, speech, and livelihood had already been purified earlier. And so the Buddha says, and thus this noble eightfold path comes to fulfillment by development. Okay, I think maybe this will do for my presentation on the Noble Eightfold Path. And now we could leave some time to take some questions. And let me take the participant list and see what kind of questions have come up. And I said earlier, there was Laura, I said, had a question from the morning session. And so you can unmute and ask the question that you had.
Hi there. Yes, I'm wondering, I guess in the practical terms, what is the life of an arhat?
Wait, I'm not getting your voice very.
Hello?
Yeah, maybe if you could get closer to your microphone.
Hello?
Okay, now it's better.
What the life of an arhat is without the clinging and craving, and upon passing, if there's any instruction to keep the liberated in the non-nothingness, if there's an instruction upon or during the passing that one would be doing. I guess we could ask this, and I don't know that there is an answer as to why we were even brought here pre-life into this whole cycle, but
as for that point, the Buddha says that there's no, it's not that we've been brought into the cycle, but the Buddha says that there's no beginning, no first point to the samsara, to the cycle of repeated birth and death. So we've been in this through beginningless time. It's hard to imagine what beginningless time is like, but we've always been here in a way, going through this process of repeated birth and death.
so with the life of the arhat, while he's become the arhat and still here, what would that be? And upon passing, how does the liberation get to be kind of cemented in, so to speak? Is there like a guideline when one is dying?
Yeah, okay, as for the life of the arhat continues to live the duration of his or her normal lifespan, whatever that will be. And it's said that when one achieves arhatship, one becomes, the arhatship is said to be attained by monastics, monks or nuns. But there are a few cases are mentioned in the suttas of lay people who do attain arhatship, but then immediately after attainment or soon after attainment, they seek ordination and become monastics. And so, but they continue to live let's say, a normal monastic life, maybe a bit more secluded than others, not so much involved in busy activity. But otherwise, maybe from the outside, they don't look especially different from others, except that they don't betray any signs of greed, ill will, or delusion. And as for cementing it in, there's no need to cement in the liberation, because once ignorance and craving are eliminated, they have no way to come back.
So they would just, there's not like some instruction during the passing into.
Not necessary, no.
Thank you so much.
Okay. As I said, Wiley, is he here? He had his, excuse me, his hand raised in the morning.
Oh, hello, Bante. Thank you for taking my question.
Your voice is so loud now. Let me just bring my microphone down.
Sorry. My original question was on the discussion of craving for annihilation, creating rebirth, but I meditated on it and something arose. So let me run it past you to see if this is a good inclination.
If you can keep it concise, because I see
Sure.
quite a lot of hands up. Yeah.
Sure.
Go on.
Okay, could it be the craving for annihilation creates rebirth simply because craving for annihilation requires a belief in a permanent self? If you're aware of the moment-to-moment impermanence of the self, you're aware that there's nothing to annihilate. And if you desire to annihilate the self, you must believe the self is permanent. And it's a belief in a permanent self that drives the rebirth of identity view in the next moment of consciousness.
Yeah, it could be that. Yeah, but
So,
the way I would see it, that even the person holds at the intellectual level the annihilationist view, and so on that basis has the craving for annihilation, but at a more sort of fundamental instinctive view, there's still the bhava-tanha, the craving for existence is still there.
Okay.
At the below the intellectual or theoretical level, and that is what drives the rebirth process.
Yeah. But I was just, the question was how the craving for annihilation creates rebirth, and I did think that was kind of an interesting loop. But thank you.
Yeah.
And also on the definition or a way of defining mindfulness, I know it's kind of hard to describe to people, but sometimes for meditation they just need something to get them jump started, and then their development of mindfulness will deepen. But how about just mindfulness is the practice of maintaining awareness of the movement of your attention? Is there anything wrong with that definition?
Say it again. Mindfulness is the
maintaining awareness of the movement of your attention. And I know that's not complete, but
that's a rather complicated. I would say in the meditative context, mindfulness is simply keeping the object in mind, not letting the object slip away. And when the object slips away, recognizing that the object has slipped away and bringing the object back to the mind.
That's what I was trying to cover in one phrase, just maintaining awareness of what your mind is on. But if that's not clear, I'll keep working on it. Thank you.
I guess there are different ways to look at it. Okay. Jane Marie.
Thank you, Bante. I have a two-part question, but I think it's brief. So the first point is that I've always wondered why the precept on the abstention of taking intoxicants wasn't listed in the Noble Eightfold Path, because we've got the three morality factors. So at what point does that precept, come into the teachings?
Yeah, that precept, of course, is included as the 5th precept in the 5 precepts. I would say probably because the 3 factors included under right action are factors that are in themselves morally significant, whereas the taking of intoxicants is not itself morally significant, but it's still included in the Buddhist training, the ethical training, because when one takes intoxicants, then it weakens the sense of hiri and otapa, the sense of moral restraint, and then one becomes more disposed to engage in the expressly unwholesome or immoral types of actions. Yeah, that would be my answer. And then the second part? Did I lose? I think I lost you. Okay, then we'll go to Andrew.
Thank you, Bhante. What is your opinion or your view about the relationship between noting as a meditation technique and right mindfulness?
Okay, the use of noting is usually considered to have been something of a, maybe we say an innovation of the Venerable Mahasi Sayadaw, though I don't think it was really, the technique was created by him. But I see actually the method of noting, we could even say that it's implicit in the Satipatthana Sutta, where when a particular, say, state arises, it says that the practitioner is aware that such and such a state has arisen. For example, in contemplation of the mind. So when there is a state of mind accompanied by lust, one knows there is a state of mind accompanied by lust. We could say that that is a kind of noting that we already find in the suttas. Though Mahasi Sayadaw has brought it out quite explicitly and used it quite extensively. And now what I found, I mean, I've done the practice in the Mahasi system, and this is from my own experience and practice and from also what I've heard from teachers in that tradition. Like, you use the method of noting, constant noting, pretty much in the preliminary phases of practice to build up momentum. But when the mindfulness and clear comprehension gain that momentum, when they're working very strongly and efficiently, then one doesn't have to continue and maintain the constant noting. But just it's sufficient just to apply mindfulness to what is occurring in the present moment of one's experience without the noting. And whatever is occurring will become apparent. So the noting is a kind of skillful device, let's say, for building up sufficient mindfulness to carry on without reliance on the noting. Is that clear? I think we lost, I noticed just before we lost Jane Marie, but I see she's back. I went to, Andrew, are you there? Seems we lost him. Jane Marie, did you have a second question? You said you had 2 questions.
Yeah, thank you, Bhante. And I apologize, it's my reflex to hit mute when I'm not speaking, and then I couldn't unmute.
Oh, I see.
Yes, so you did answer the first part, thank you. So the second point was, because there are the 3 morality factors in the Noble Eightfold Path,
Yeah.
and the Noble Eightfold Path is contained in the 4th Noble Truth.
Yeah.
But could it be said, or is this a stretch, that the precepts are contained within the 4 Noble Truths, the 5 precepts? Or at least the 4 precepts?
Yeah, 4 precepts are contained within the Noble Eightfold Path. 3 under right action, and one of them is included under right speech. Yeah, that could be said.
Thank you.
Okay. Chi Liang.
Bhante, let me be more precise in asking the question I asked you this morning. So when you said that for Sankhara Dukkha, right, both Buddha and Arahat, they have, there's no felt experience. So by that, did you mean both physical and mental?
What I said is that they don't have mental suffering. They're still fit, or they don't have mental pain or suffering, but they'll have physical pain.
I see. Okay.
Yeah, the physical pain is inescapable. I mean, the Buddha fell sick from time to time. Sariputta fell sick. Mahakassapa fell sick. The Buddha was wounded and injured, and this text says that he suffered excruciating pain when he was wounded. Yeah, so they experience physical pain, but they endure it with mindfulness and clear comprehension, and it doesn't give rise to any kind of mental distress. Does that
Thank you,
count?
Bhante. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, thank you.
Okay. Okay, V.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I could hear you.
Yeah, Bhante, I went through what the Buddha's teaching. He seems to emphasize a lot on feeling, because for the first noble truth, we know that there's a dukkha feeling, and also the 5 aggregates, there's a feeling, and the 4 foundation of mindfulness, there's a feeling, and 12 DO, the dependent origination, there's also a feeling. So my question is this, is feeling the weakest link if we want to get out of samsara? Is where we chop at the feeling as soon as we mindfully or clearly comprehend that this incident is actually suffering, and that we contemplate it as such, that it's using the 3 marks of existence, then we cut it off at the feeling. Is it the right approach?
I don't want to say that any one link is the weakest link, but we could say that feeling plays an extremely important role in the Buddha's sort of strategy of liberation, because first, feeling is within the formula for dependent origination. Feeling is the condition for craving, for tanha, and it's with the connection between feeling and craving that one can either sort of renew the cycle of birth and death if one yields to the feeling, or one could weaken, in a sense, attenuate and weaken the process of continuing on by, instead of yielding to the feeling, one turns the feeling into an object of contemplation. And also we could say that feeling is connected with all 3 of the unwholesome roots, since pleasant feeling, agreeable feeling, is what sort of triggers and nurtures and feeds greed or attachment, because one likes pleasant feeling. And so it's through the pleasant feeling that one has nandi raga, delight and attachment, whereas painful feeling is what triggers and strengthens ill will or hatred. And it's the dull, neutral feeling that sustains delusion or ignorance. And so to weaken greed, hatred, and delusion, one has to be able to contemplate just pleasant feeling as pleasant feeling without being sucked into it, contemplate painful feeling as painful feeling without being either frightened or repelled by it, and contemplate neutral feeling as neutral feeling without being deluded by it. So feeling does play that critical role.
Yep. Can I ask another question in respect of if it is so important, is that a way that we can detect it just in time? Because when we contemplate, it's always a lag, the lagging behind the contemplation before you can say stop, don't take action. So is there a way that the Buddha actually teach the disciple as to just in time, immediately when you saw something or an object, you will be able to catch it immediately?
Well, this is what happens through the development of mindfulness as a deliberative practice, that as the mindfulness becomes sharper, say within the meditative process, particularly when one is doing like a sustained retreat, a long-term retreat, then you are sustaining mindfulness over longer periods, and it's gaining momentum as one progresses from day to day. And in that way, with mindfulness, one can notice at finer and finer levels, it's increasingly subtler levels, the arising of different feelings, different states of mind. And so in that way, one can respond appropriately to the feelings and the states of mind more quickly than we can do when we're going about our normal everyday activities.
Okay.
So that is a special benefit of sustained, long-term, intensive meditation practice.
Yep. Thank you, Bante. I don't have further question. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. We take Suki. Good to see you here, Suki. You have to unmute. That's
Now,
it. Yeah.
Is it? Ante, when you were explaining the right effort,
Yeah.
You about the non-arising of unoriginal state, you connected it with the sambodang, the awakening factors.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Is there any like suttas or any other places where I could actually read more about the relationship?
I'd have to think about it. The sutta doesn't come to mind immediately.
Oh, okay.
Though I have a recollection of having read that someplace, but the exact place, I don't have that perfect memory.
I'll ask you later. Thank you. Thank you.
I'll try to find it.
Okay.
Okay, Stacy. Stacy.
Hi, Bante.
Yeah,
the question is about the in the Satipatthana Sutta. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear.
Oh, so the contemplating of the body and the body contemplating feelings, mind and Dhamma. I've heard it said.
I think your connection is not so strong.
Contemplating.
Yeah, there's some problem with your connection. The voice keeps on breaking, coming back, breaking.
I can maybe move a little bit. I'm not in the best service area. Can you hear me?
I could hear you. It's not the problem with the volume.
Oh, just that I'm breaking up.
Yeah.
Should I try?
Okay, just try to ask the question.
Question again?
Yeah.
Okay, so the in the Satipatthana Sutta, the contemplating the body and the body, the mind and mind, feelings and feelings. So I've heard it said that it's contemplating other people's body and mind, feelings and Dhamma. You know, is that related to, if it is talking about other people's body, mind, feelings, and Dhamma, is it related to the idea of the fetter of conceit, like that we're always comparing ourselves to others?
Yeah, this is getting to be a rather complicated question, and not so directly related to what I was saying. But let's just say in the Satipatthana Sutta, for each of the 4 foundations of mindfulness, the text says one contemplates, say, the body and the body internally with reference to oneself. One contemplates the body and the body externally, and that is taken to be with relation to other people. One contemplates the body and the body both internally and externally. That is alternating quickly back and forth between the two. So
Okay.
the purpose is, of course, it's not expressly stated within the sutta, but probably what this does is give one a sort of an extensive understanding of the 4 foundations of mindfulness, how they're applicable both to oneself and others. Okay, I'm going to have to go quickly through the next 2 questions because we've actually gone over our time. So let us take Jane, Rose. You can unmute.
Thank you, Bhante. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you very
Thank
clearly.
you. Some of us have been interested in the path of the Bodhisattva. Can you briefly just say the connection between the Eightfold Path and the path, if anyone has considered or is considering or has the Bodhisattva vow, if that is
Yes.
in any way some guidance for that?
Yeah, the Bodhisattva path is based not so much on the Noble Eightfold Path, which is the direct way to liberation, but the Bodhisattva path, of course, is based on a different set of qualities which are to be cultivated, which are called paramitas or paramis. And we have in the Southern or Theravada tradition a set of 10 paramitas, and in the Northern Mahayana tradition, 6 paramitas, which then get connected with the 4 Brahma Viharas to make a set of 10 qualities. Yeah, so they're sort of alternative paths rather than, and of course, in practicing the Bodhisattva path, one would have to develop the factors of the Noble Eightfold Path, but not in the same way as one who is using the Noble Eightfold Path as the direct vehicle to liberation.
Thank you.
In fact, I gave like a series of lectures on the paramitas when I was at another monastery. You could find them on the website of Bodhi Monastery in New Jersey. I think the lectures still should be on their website.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Susie, Pennsylvania. Unmute.
I can only unmute when they give me permission, so it takes about 15 seconds for that to happen.
Okay.
The phrase clear comprehension or repeats repeatedly in the mindfulness section, and it's my understanding there's a teaching that's more specific around that. Does that show up in a sutta, the idea of purpose and suitability and domain?
No, I know what you're familiar with. That is a commentarial distinction, an explanation of the way one practices sampajanya or clear comprehension. So clear comprehension of the purpose of one's action. This is before contemplating any kind of action. One has to understand the purpose. Then there's the clear comprehension of suitability. What are the appropriate means for achieving one's purpose? Clear comprehension of the domain. That is clear comprehension of the meditation object, and clear comprehension of non-delusion, which is really in effect the development of insight wisdom. Yeah, but that is elaborated in the commentaries, particularly the commentary to the Satipatthana Sutta and the Digha Nikaya commentary to the Samanyapala Sutta, Sutta number 2. Okay, I think that will have to do for the question session. And let me see the schedule. Okay, we have a break until 5 p.m. 4:20 to 5. Oh, I'm sorry. We have the meditation now. Let's take a 5-minute break and we will do the meditation from 4:30. From 4:30 to 5, we'll do the meditation. Okay. Okay, for this session, I'm not going to have to give any special instructions. Everybody, I think, has already some basic instructions on mindfulness of the breathing, or if you prefer some other meditative object, you can use whatever object you prefer. And so we'll just sit silently, focusing on our preferred meditation object from now until 5 p.m. So just take your congenial meditation position and just settle into the practice. Okay, now you can return your attention to the full body. Just dwell for a moment, aware, attentive to the full body. Then take a few deep, mindful breaths in and out. And then you can rub the palms together to generate some warmth. And then you can rub the palms over the face, top of the head, back of the head, back of the neck, and shoulders. And then down the lower back to the buttocks, then down to the knees. Massage the knees a bit. And then down, if you've been sitting on a mat, down to the feet and the toes. So that will be our afternoon sessions. And so now it's 5 p.m. So we have a break until 6 p.m. when you can rejoin us for a short period of chanting, and then there'll be another period of meditation. And then we have the next Dharma talk at 7 p.m. Okay, so thank you all for participating and hope to see you again this evening.